The Hallowed Sepulchre was added with the Sins of the Father quest and is now objectively the fastest XP for agility in-game, as well as the best agility training method for GP on top of that. It is similar to Pyramid Plunder in that you have a timer that will lock you out of looting coffins in the area if you are too slow, but it is mechanically challenging on top of this. Looting the 5 total coffins in the 4th and 5th floor before the final coffin, as well as the grand coffin at the end, will net you, without any rare drops, about 1.5 mil an hour if you are consistent. The final coffin has a small chance to provide the Ring of Endurance, which seems to have a drop rate around 1 out of 256. The current ring price has actually maintained its value at about 50 mil for the past week, which is quite a bit more than I expected. With current Ring of Endurance prices, about 50 mil, with an assumed drop rate of 1 out of 256, the GP an hour goes up to 2.8 mil an hour while looting coffins. Now, even if the ring drops to 30 mil, this will work out to 2.25 mil an hour. Obviously, the ring could be more or less rare, and I'm simply guessing here, but these are very impressive GP rates, even without including the ring. From looting the later coffins, you receive items like rune alkables, big piles of blood and soul runes, Ranar weed and seeds, etc., as well as 4 to 6 hallowed marks each. With the recent update, XP rates have gone down about 10k an hour. I was able to hit rates of 70k agility XP an hour while looting 5 coffins and the grand coffin, so if you can handle the difficulty, this is absolutely the best method for agility now. 80k XP an hour is possible if you skip all coffins and go for only the grand coffin at the end with a pretty quick speed. This is still tremendously better GP an hour and XP an hour than any other agility method, so it is still very much worth doing if you can handle the difficulty. Don't expect to get rates like this until you practice quite a bit. It took me about 2 days straight of Sepulchre to be able to start hitting consistent rates, and I'm still improving with each run. I would equate Sepulchre to the difficulty of a decently difficult boss like Vorkath or Zulrah. It takes a lot of effort and practice to get good at it. As someone who typically only does AFK methods, this is an incredibly fun piece of content that I did 12 hours a day without getting bored. Honestly, as I write this, I really just want to go do more right now. If it looks off-putting, I would recommend at least giving it a shot. You may be questioning the length of the video. I'm guessing close to 30 minutes as I write this script. But that's because I explain in detail each specific variant for each floor. Feel free to use the chapters on the bar or timestamps to navigate through this video, as it is quite a doozy. Sepulchre has very high requirements. It is located in Darkmire, and it requires Sins of the Father quest to be completed before you can enter it. There are 5 floors to the Sepulchre, and each floor has different agility requirements, from level 52 to access floor 1 to 92 to access floor 5. The ring can only be obtained from looting the Grand Hallowed Coffin at the end of floor 5, and your XP rates are going to be lower the lower the floor you can access. It seems like it's really only worth doing this if you have 92 agility, but the rates for the lower levels have yet to be really tested. To loot any coffin, you will also need at least 66 thieving. To access certain coffins throughout the run, you'll also need 54 prayer, 56 construction, and a high magic level. The higher enchant jewelry spell you have, the better. Best being 93 magic. You could possibly skip the prayer level, as those coffins are not found on floor 5, but I do like to loot the coffins on floor 4 as well for more loot. Your gear setup is going to vary depending on how much Sepulchre you have already done. When I started, I equipped Full Graceful, a Mithril Grapple, Dorgshan Crossbow. Any crossbow will work, but Dorgshan is actually the lightest. You can get multiple heavy rune plate body drops, so it's best to reduce weight where possible. And a Saradomin Stole. You need any Saradomin item to restore Ren energy between floors. You could alternatively use a Book of Law or Holy Symbol. Keep in mind this becomes irrelevant once you can afford any hallowed item, including the ring, as they also count. Eventually, you will want to also equip a hallowed ring, focus, grapple, and symbol for help in looting coffins. For inventory, you will want the following: saw and hammer, hallowed hammer instead once you buy it, a decent stack of rune nails, runes to cast your highest enchant jewelry spell. I don't bother using a rune pouch, as the coffins give both blood and soul runes, as well as cosmic runes, and I don't want to bother placing them in my pouch. If you have a lower magic level, bring the pouch for sure. I also bring 8 mahogany planks, as you need 2 mahogany planks per bridge you build. I bring a strange lockpick, as it is confirmed this increases your chance to open coffins successfully and doesn't use charges here. These are currently about 175k as of recording this. I could see them going quite a bit lower over time. Finally, I leave a slot for hallowed marks. I also bring about 4 vampire dust with the hallowed symbol, Without it, you may want more than that. Each shrine takes 2 dust to open, and only 1 with the symbol. You also really don't need stamina potions here, as you can recharge run energy with a Ceradomin item between each floor. But an Explorer's Ring might be handy to bring if you have one, as there was a lot of times I forgot to recharge my run energy between the floors, and I had to walk around wasting precious time. There's nothing more painful than getting to the 5th floor and realizing you forgot to recharge your run energy. The Sepulchre is located in the northeastern section of Darkmire. Wear your Noble robes as you run there through Darkmire to avoid getting attacked by Firewatch. After entering the Sepulchre, talk to the mysterious stranger. Proceed through the dialogue and he will give you 5 hollowed crystal shards, which can teleport you back to the Sepulchre later. You buy more of these in the stranger's store for 1 mark each later, so I would recommend always having some in your bank. I'm going to mention Runelite plugins before anything else because they are so important here. I can't imagine trying to do this on mobile. I was going to mention the Sepulchre plugin, but this was moved to your agility plugin and should be on by default. This simply highlights the hitbox of the arrows and sword traps. Next is the GPU plugin. The increased render distance of the GPU plugin is incredibly important here. I keep this at 90 so the entire chunk is always rendered at once, although you may want to lower this a bit with a weaker computer, as the area does tend to lag more than other areas in RuneScape because of its massive size. This plugin allows you to see any upcoming traps in general, especially the arrow firing statues, as they will play an animation in the location they are going to fire. The animation smoothing plugin is also surprisingly helpful here. It makes the fire clearly bellow each tick, allowing you to count and then run tick perfectly each time. The highlight current true tile option in the tile indicators plugin is a godsend. This tells you what tile you actually are on according to the server. This allows you to much more easily dodge traps. You should also check the highlight hovered tile option, as this shows where you are going to walk to when you click. Ground markers is also practically necessary. This simply lets you mark a tile when you hold shift and right click. I will be laying out an entire map of player tiles throughout the entire Sepulchre later in the video. I use them more here than at any other piece of content. Finally, there's the widget hider external plugin you can find in the plugin hub at the bottom of plugins and needs to be installed. This was actually just added with the Friday update with Runelite. This allows you to set a keybind. By default, this is Control and H. That hides your UI and allows you much more room to click. The fact it's on a keybind makes it so much more usable, as you can pop your UI back open between floors to check your chat. This is extremely handy, especially for Sepulchre. Before I get into the meat of this, let's talk about each trap you will encounter. Getting damaged by a trap, unless specified otherwise, will send you back to a checkpoint, so you want to avoid them as much as possible. These all typically have 3 different forms you encounter that are more typical the deeper you go. First is the Ceradomin sword trap. These are all thrown by a giant statue and take up a gigantic area of 9 tiles. The regular Cerasword variant of these you encounter on the 1st and 2nd floors, respectively. These move at 2 tiles per tick, the same as a player running. The second variant throws what looks to be a giant blessed Cerasword. This is encountered on the 3rd floor. This moves at 3 tiles per tick, a bit faster than a running player. The third variant throws a giant blue Cerasword. Can we please get this as an ornament kit? It looks so cool. This is found only on the 4th and 5th floors. This moves at 4 tiles per tick, significantly faster than even a running player. These traps typically require you to either quickly run past them when you have a free moment, or utilize blue tiles to teleport past them. You can run around them before the statue catches them with some clever tile placement. Next are teleporters, which are encountered on every floor. These actually are helpful in a lot of cases. These have 2 variants, yellow which teleport you backwards a decent ways, or the blue tiles which teleport you forward a decent ways. These typically come in clumps of 9 and are only active for 4 ticks at a time. Both of these make you invulnerable to all traps for a short period of time. This feels like 2 ticks, but it might be more, it's hard to tell. Typically, the yellow tiles simply hinder you, but the blue tiles can be used to skip sections and avoid traps entirely. Use these liberally whenever you can. If you run over a teleporter from the tile before, you will avoid it completely, even if it is activated. But because they come in clumps of 9, you can't avoid them all. I typically lay out tile placements, so I run over more blue tiles than yellow. Next is lightning. This is only encountered on floors 4 and 5. This is actually one of the least dangerous traps, as it doesn't actually send you back to a checkpoint. Rather, it stuns you for about 2 ticks. These can also be completely avoided by standing on the tile before the first lightning spot and running through the entire section due to their checkerboard pattern. You can also safely walk diagonally through these to a safe spot, which you will often have to do to avoid arrows. These can be very dangerous in the last section, so make sure you run straight through them every time. Next are crossbow statues. These are always found in groups of 3, typically at the end of long hallways. They'll shoot bolts at you that move at a speed of 3 tiles per tick, a bit faster than a running player. The first variant has no gold trim and can be found on the first and second floor. Only one statue will fire at a time, so these are relatively easy. The next 2 variants with gold trim and gold and blue trim respectively are found on the 3rd, 4th, and 5th floors. Aside from cosmetic differences, these statues are the exact same and fire 2 bolts at once randomly at the same speed 3 tiles per tick. You cannot run through these, even if you time it perfectly, so you have to avoid them. You can tell what the next pattern of bolts is by which statues are playing an animation. If you are forced to avoid the next pattern, it's usually best to try to click 2 tiles ahead in the direction you need to go. This way you maintain running speed instead of walking for a tick. Finally are the Flame Wizard statues. These shoot flames in a specific pattern that can alternate on a cycle and cannot be run through. The scorch marks on the ground indicate a location where flames can hit you and by which statue. All of the statues have the same delay between attacks of 4 ticks, but different tick intervals for when they fire. The first variant are stone statues encountered on the 1st and 2nd floor. Their flame attack lasts only for 3 ticks as of the last update, and always fire the exact same direction every time. The second variant is the golden trim statues located on the 3rd and 4th floors. Their attacks also last for 3 ticks. These will begin to have cycles and will not have the same pattern every time. The final variant has blue and gold trim and is found only on the 5th floor. Their attacks last for only 2 ticks. These are placed in some very long patterns with very complicated cycles and require careful tile indicator placement to get past. Typically, we try to get through these in as few cycles as possible. Oftentimes, these require tick-perfect timing in order to pass. For the stone statues, you need to wait 3 ticks, then run. For the golden stone statues, you count the flames 3 times, then run. And gold and blue trimmed 2 times, then run. I was about to talk about an awful bug that caused the statue's flames to sometimes start a tick late, but luckily Jagex fixed this bug so we don't have to worry about it anymore. The fire is now always accurate and can be counted for the tick rate each time. There are also various coffins scattered throughout the floors. These mini challenges can be failed, but will not send you back at all. Just waste your time a little bit. I typically only bother with these on the 4th and 5th floor, as the loot scales with the deeper floors. Although it is definitely possible to loot more than just the 4th and 5th floor if you are fast. Some testing is needed to see if this is worth doing. The earlier coffins have a very similar loot table to the later ones, but with more junk items scattered in and less hollowed marks. You will occasionally find things like monk robes or holy symbols, and the first floor can give only 1 hallowed mark per coffin. Although you still can get things like valuable rune drops and things like rune plate bodies and ranars. Completing any mini challenges will have you opening a coffin. Anytime you lockpick a coffin, you have a small chance to fail and get poisoned for 2 poison damage. A regular lockpick reduces the chance of this happening, and a strange old lockpick reduces this further. If you have the hollowed ring, this poison damage is so negligible, you will out-heal it automatically over time. It may be worth bringing an antidote plus without the ring to avoid this small amount of damage, but it depends on your levels. The first challenge is the grapple. This requires you to grapple across a pit to a coffin. Lockpick it open, then grapple back across. Failing a grapple challenge is pretty common, and while it doesn't make you lose materials, it wastes more time than any other challenge, at about 5 ticks each fail. And not only that, you have to grapple twice, not just once like with the other challenges. You can also still fail even with the hallowed grapple. It simply makes your success rate higher. Another challenge is portal frame conjurations. These require you to cast an enchant jewelry spell to open a portal to float across a gap, after which you can lockpick a coffin and float back. Failing hardly hinders you, as you don't fail very often, and you simply need to recast a spell wasting about 1 tick. But failing a second time will crack the portal and prevent you from accessing the coffin. Using level 7 enchant, I have never cracked a portal, and I've only failed once in about 50 runs with the Hallowed Focus. So using the highest level enchant you can here definitely helps. I have tested this with Onyx enchant and failed only once in 10 enchants with the Focus. I would recommend toting a lava staff with you and skipping Zenyte enchant once you have the Focus. If you happen to get blood and soul runes before a portal enchant, you can manually cast a spell in the portal to avoid using Zenyte enchant. The bridge construction challenge has you simply building a bridge using 2 planks and 5 nails, after which you can walk across. Lockpick the coffin and walk back. Failing again wastes only about 1 tick, but you will bend 5 nails for each fail. This is why I use runite nails, as failing is pretty uncommon, and you save nails anyway because you build the bridge faster. You also get a lot of extra experience for using mahogany planks, so if you need construction XP anyway, there's really no reason not to use mahogany planks over anything else. Finally are the braziers. These can't be failed and provide 60 prayer experience per dust used. To open them, you simply sacrifice 2 vampire dust on the brazier, 1 with the hallowed symbol. Then you can walk through the barrier, lockpick the coffin, then walk back. Because it can't be failed and gives less XP with less dust, the hallowed symbol was the last item I bought. The floors have randomly chosen variants depending on the floor. The first and second section each have 4 variants. The third and fourth each have 2 variants that converge at the same point. And the final 5th floor only has 1 variant. I'm going to be going over each variant for each floor. Feel free to skip through the timestamps in the description to find variants you are struggling with. I would also recommend doing some slow runs through the Sepulchre and copy my tile markers. The Sepulchre doesn't kick you out if you run out of time. It simply prevents you from looting coffins. If you make it to the 5th floor, you can actually just slowly lay out every tile marker, eventually in a single long run, which I would really highly recommend doing, as the flame statues have very complicated patterns on the 5th floor. You can also still get the agility XP and pet chance if you make it to the end of the floor. So I would never reset by logging out if I failed. Simply continue attempts until you make it to the end, and then exit for that sweet, sweet agility XP. As soon as you take the stepping stone to the transition to the next floor, or cross the stones to the Grand Hallowed Coffin at the end, the timer will be paused. The way the rooms work is kind of wonky. When you enter the next floor, it will always be the exact same layout as it resets when you enter, unless another player is on the floor when you get there. I get why they did this. They didn't want the Sepulchre to be instanced, and it would definitely look weird if other players were just running through traps on your screen. But I really still wish it didn't work this way. As I get into layouts, I'm going to explain each as if there was no player on the floor, but leave a certain tile indicator in case other players are there and you need a backup. Other players sometimes can speed up your runs a bit and let you get PBs as you get layouts you wouldn't normally get, but most of the time they will waste time. Try and find a world with a lower player count with the lowest ping possible for your runs. The floors have variants based on which cardinal direction they place you in. I will start from north and then go east, south, then west for each floor in that order. I will put a tick on the screen if a section requires tick-perfect clicks in order to not fail. On early runs, I would probably avoid looting coffins entirely to give you more time to complete the Sepulchre, and slowly add coffins from the end of your run to earlier on in order to get more loot as you get more comfortable. Starting with the very first floor, with the northern section, you should try to run through the arrow statues as quickly as possible, usually requiring you to dodge only 1 to 2 arrows, although even with a perfect run, the fires will begin as soon as you get here. Count the 3 bellows, then run to my tile indicator in the middle. Again, count 3 bellows, and run to my next tile indicator. Count 3 final bellows, then run to the stairs to finish the floor. The very end of this floor has a grapple coffin after you jump down the stairs, if you are a lower level and intend on looting it. The eastern section is pretty forgiving. You simply need to click to my first tile indicator and wait for the fire to end. Perfect time will leave you waiting for 2 ticks. After 3 bellows, run through the entire set of statues. The sword should be just getting thrown here, so if you've run perfectly, you can just keep running. If you messed up on the fires, you will have to wait on my tile indicator for the sword to get caught or thrown. Run to my next tile indicator before the statues. If you are perfect, you will still need to wait a full 3 ticks for the fire to end. Count 3 bellows, then run to the end with the stairs. You can find a grapple challenge after you jump down the stairs if you are a lower level. For the south section, an optimal lap requires extremely fast clicks. You need to be clicking as you enter the floor in order to make the cycle with the sword. If you are fast enough, the sword will be spinning at the end of the platform, and just as it comes back, you will make it past with 1 tick to spare. You unfortunately will still have to wait 1 tick before the fires stop. You then can run past, but you can't make it all the way. Run as far as you can to my tile indicator, and then count 3 more fire bellows. Then run up past the arrows. You typically only ever have to dodge 1 arrow, and then you can run to the end. Once you have jumped down the stairs, you can optionally do a bridge challenge for a coffin if you are a lower level. For the western section, you have plenty of time. Simply run over, and if you ran as fast as possible, you will have to walk 1 tick to wait for the fire to stop. Then simply run to the middle of the statues to my tile indicator, count 3 bellows, then run to the corner with my tile indicator. If you ran perfectly so far, you can simply keep running to the arrow section to avoid the sword as well. If not, you will have to wait. You typically only have to dodge 1 to 2 arrows to make it past to the staircase to end the floor. Once you have jumped down the stairs, you can optionally do a bridge challenge for a coffin if you are a lower level. Moving on to floor 2, in the northern section, immediately run to the platforms and jump over. Your character does this automatically and you cannot fail this. Run to my tile indicator, then run past the arrows. You typically only need to avoid 1 here. If you ran perfectly, the sword should be almost to the statue, requiring you to wait a tick before continuing to the next level. Before you proceed, you can optionally grab the grapple challenge south of the stairs. Proceed down the stairs and run to my tile indicator before the teleporters. If you run straight through the middle, you only have a chance of hitting yellow teleporters on the second group. Hitting blue teleporters here won't speed up your run, but they won't waste time either. Count the bellows as you run to the fire statues. If you are perfect, you will need to wait 1 tick. After counting the bellows, run to my next tile indicator. Unfortunately, these are just barely long enough you can't run all the way through. Count the 3 bellows after you are near the end, then run to the very end of the floor. If another player was on the floor and things are a bit out of whack, there may be times you can make it to my middle tile indicator towards the start of the fire statues. This will save a cycle and allow you to run through the rest of the statues on the next cycle. The eastern section is actually pretty easy. You have plenty of time to run over to the tile before the statues. You'll have to wait a full statue cycle to continue here, so count 3 bellows, then run to my tile indicator. Count another 3 bellows, then run to the western section before the arrows, then run through the arrow statues. You will have to dodge 2 to 3 arrows here. Then run to my middle marker before the teleporters and run across. You completely avoid the yellow tiles if you run in the middle. Now, blue teleporters will not save time if you get hit by them, but they won't waste it either. There's a brazier at the end of the path if you are lower level and want to loot it. Climb down the stairs, then run to my tile marker before the statues. You will have to wait a cycle before you can continue, so count 3 bellows, then run to my next indicator. Count 3 bellows again, then run to my next indicator before the next set of statues. If you ran optimally, you will have to wait 1 tick, then can run to the end. Count the bellows just in case. For the southern section, quickly run past the arrow statues. There's a short enough distance you typically only need to dodge a single arrow. After you have passed the statues, run to my tile marker right before the second set of yellow teleporters. If you have run perfectly so far, you will have to wait a single tick and can then run behind the sword as it gets thrown, running to the end. There is no way to avoid a chance of yellow tile on this path, unfortunately, so you will have to risk it when you run. You can make it past a sword if you click right as it stops moving and is about to get caught, or as it's being thrown. You can find a brazier at the end of this path, should you want to loot it. Walk down the stairs, then simply avoid the arrow statues and run to the end. You typically only have to avoid 2 arrows in this section. The western section is one that is notoriously easy if you get it. Simply start running and you can avoid most of the traps. Run to my next tile indicator way over by the teleporters in the northwest. You will always avoid the sword. Before you can do this, you can optionally grab the grapple challenge right behind where the sword spins. They added blue teleporters in the last update here, so run through the middle to avoid the chance of walking over a yellow teleporter entirely. The blues won't save time if they activate, but they won't waste it either. Getting into the fire statues with perfect timing will leave you waiting a full cycle. Count the 3 bellows, then run through the entire section. Jump down the stairs. If you made it here perfectly, you'll have to wait for the sword to come back here before you can get past. Simply run through the middle to get to the end of the floor. If you get here with weird timing, you can run as the sword gets thrown and run behind it. It then is fastest to run around the sword to the right to get to the end of the floor. The third floor has only an eastern and western section. For the eastern section, run up to the tile before the fire statues. If the outer fires were firing, you can run past with extra leeway even if you are late. count the bellows, then run through to the next indicator. Again, count 3 bellows, then run through to the tile before the sword. If no other players are here, the sword should be getting caught as you get here if you ran perfectly. So you don't even need to stop and can continue running to the indicator before the statues. If the sword is in a different rotation, you can optionally step off to the candles on the right side of the path to avoid it coming back. Although these rarely come in handy, and you typically will just have to wait for it to get caught or thrown. Once you are at the archers, avoid the arrows and run up the path. Try to run over blue tiles as much as possible. Don't forget you are invincible to arrows for about 2 ticks after being teleported, so this is fairly safe to do and will save a lot of time. Once you make it to the end, wait for the sword to get caught or thrown, then run to the next tile indicator. You need to wait at the statues until the further fires have ended. Count the 3 bellows like normal, then run through to the staircase at the end. If you are slow and see the later flamethrowers are ending, but you are a bit behind, you typically can run through anyway, as this section has quite a bit of leeway. Missing the section wastes so many ticks that getting hit won't even waste time, so always go for it if you are late. You optionally can do the Brazier challenge right before the staircase, although this is inefficient if you have level 92 agility. For the western section, you don't have to be perfect here, as the sword towards the end of the floor will halt your progress and force you to wait if you get there perfectly. Avoid the arrows as quickly as possible, and run through. There will be 2 arrows fired at once here, so RNG plays a big part. Typically when you get to the next statues, you will need to wait on my outer tile indicator, or if you're really fast or kind of slow, you will have to wait on the inner tile. Either way, you can run through with the next cycle. Count 3 bellows, then run through to the tile indicator before the sword. Typically, the statue will just be throwing the sword as you get to this tile, so you'll want to immediately run to pass it. This is a very tight window. Getting hit by a yellow tile will cause you to get hit by the sword. I typically run across the close set of tiles to speed up the run, but it is safer to run across the middle to hit only blue tiles. Run around and then run past the arrow statues to the tile indicator before the sword. If you made it here very fast, the statue should just be catching the sword and you can immediately run past. If you were extremely fast, you'll still have to wait for the sword to get caught by the statue anyway. You can optionally take the portal challenge here, although this is inefficient to do if you are level 92 agility. The last part of this floor converges and is the same for both variants, you'll just be on a different side. I have seen many people struggle with this section. The easiest way to get through this is to wait until the fires are coming from the lower statues, allowing you to step a little closer. Avoid the arrows as you count the bellows. After you have counted, run to the next spot before the fire of the bottom statues. Avoid one more set of arrows as you count 3 bellows, then run to the very end. You'll avoid the rest of the arrows with no problem. You can actually outrun them. If you are forced to run in the middle, wait once you have made it past all the fire statues. Sometimes the side arrows can clip you as you run to the end. If you're wondering if you can run all the way tick perfectly from the outer fires, unfortunately you're 1 tile too slow to make it. The 4th floor has only a northern and southern entrance. For the northern entrance, immediately run to my tile indicator, then click to my next indicator before the sword. This will completely avoid all of the lightning. If you make it here perfectly, you can run out to the 3rd set of teleporters and step on the teleporter the tick it activates, bypassing the sword. If you want to go a bit slower for a bit of leeway, you can run to the 2nd set and teleport there for an extra tick of wiggle room. If the sword is a different pattern, you will have to wait for it to get caught or thrown, then use as many teleporters as possible, and quickly run to the next area avoiding the sword. This next section with the arrows is fairly difficult and RNG dependent. Like with the other floor, try to avoid yellow tiles as much as possible, and hit blue tiles as much as possible. Try to take routes that take you through blue tiles more often. After you've made it past that section, run to the indicator before the fire statues. This section has a long cycle, with 4 cycles alternating the side the statues fire from. Then on the 5th cycle, they will fire from both directions, making it impossible to dodge. I typically just wait until both statues fire at the same time, and then go. But there are times where you will just be sitting there waiting for a very long time if you do that. Try to see if you can catch what cycle the fires are doing as you run through the arrow section. And if the double statue fires started soon before you got there, run through anyway. You will need to run one tile behind my indicators if the bottom statues were the last to fire. The next arrow section is another toughie. Like before, try to walk on blue tiles as much as possible and avoid yellow tiles. Don't try to catch every blue tile, as this can waste a lot of time. Simply run as fast as you can and catch any blue tiles you see. When you get to the lightning, run to the tile before it, and then run straight through. If you have a good arrow pattern, you can actually run through both sets of lightning optimally. You can grab a portal challenge here, which is worth grabbing if you want extra money and are comfortable with the floors. Climb down the stairs and walk to the next indicator. Here, depending on your speed with RNG, you will need to wait for this sword to get caught or thrown. As soon as it is, path around the arrows and run towards the blue teleporter, catching one if you can. If you ran as it got caught, you can run straight past the blue teleporters. You don't necessarily need to catch one to make it. However, if you ran as it got thrown, you will have one chance to catch a teleporter and teleport past the sword. Sometimes the arrows can screw you here with bad RNG, so it's easiest to run after the sword gets caught. The final teleporter paths don't stop you at this point. You are in the clear. However, catching a blue teleporter here teleports you really, really far, so always try to grab one. It saves a lot of time. Alternatively, you can just run past to the end. For the southern section, if you run as fast as possible, you will have to wait one tick for the fire to clear out. Run to the middle tile indicator as soon as these end, then count 3 bellows and run past to my next indicator. Running one tile from before both sets of lightning completely avoids these, then run to my indicator before the sword. Usually you will have to wait a couple ticks before the sword is thrown, then run to my next indicator. Stop only for a single tick until the fire stops, then run through the trap to the next indicator. If you get here with a wonky cycle, you can make it through as it is being caught as well. You'll just need to run to my tile indicator in the middle and count 3 bellows. Then run to the next indicator. This next section is pretty simple. It's just a really long arrow section. Avoid all the arrows and get to the end. Before the staircase, you can actually take the bridge challenge here. This is worth doing if you want more money and are comfortable with the floors. Climb down the stairs to the next section and stand on my indicator. A standard cycle will have the sword spinning at the end of the platform, so you'll be forced to wait. Sometimes you can catch a rare time when the blue teleporter lights up. You can actually teleport past the sword. This saves a lot of time, but like I said, it's pretty rare that this occurs. Almost always you will have to wait for the sword to get caught, then click directly on the blue teleporter. If you don't catch it here, run to the start of the lightning and run through it. Then catch a blue teleporter here and run to the end. If you caught the first blue teleporter, just run and catch a second and run through. If this has a wonky cycle, you can run as it gets thrown and run behind the sword. Though this is a bit tighter, you will have to catch a teleporter and run perfectly to make it. Run around here to my next indicator. Quickly avoid the arrows here, like before. Try to hit as many blue teleporters as possible and avoid yellow. There is a lot of tightly packed teleporters here, so this will probably take a bit to get past. Once you are safely past arrows, these teleporters can't stop you, and you are home free. The blue teleporter here teleports you extremely far, so try to catch it if you can. Alternatively, run past all the teleporters and head to the exit. No matter which path you got, you can hit the brazier before the exit here. This is worth doing if you want money and are comfortable with the floors. Walk through the gate, recharge your energy, and go down to face the final floor. This is by far the hardest floor, and it is also the longest, at 3 total levels. I recommend slowly following this section your first time through and laying out all of my tile markers, as you are definitely going to need them. Keep in mind all of the fire statues on this floor only stay active for 2 ticks now, so count twice instead of 3 times. If this is one of your earlier runs through, I would skip the coffins and just focus on making it to the end. This floor is also very often warped by other players being here because it is the only variant, so expect the unexpected. The very first section will typically have the second set of statues just beginning to fire. You will want to walk to the inner tile indicator and count 2 bellows, then run through. If the other statues were firing, just count 2 bellows, then run to my inner indicator, then count 2 bellows and run through to the next indicator before the sword. A typical cycle will see the sword getting caught as you get through the fire, so you should immediately start running after getting to my indicator. You need to catch 2 blue teleporters here in order to make it to the end. If you get a wonky cycle, you can run after the sword gets thrown, just run to the second set of teleporters, and teleport past the sword with careful timing. You need to step on the teleporter the 4th tick it is active in order to get past the sword. You can do the same with the 3rd set on the 3rd or 4th tick they are active, or just wait and do it with the 1st set. Either way, run to the stairs and jump down a level. I will almost always grab the portal challenge here. All of the coffins are very rewarding for money and marks on this final floor. After grabbing that, or skipping, run through the next arrow section. This section is kind of awkward with the sets of 2 road teleporters. Like with the other arrow traps, hit as many blue teleporters as you can, and avoid the yellow ones as much as possible. After you've made it past, run to my next tile indicator. This statue will almost always be different with how much RNG there was with the arrow section previously. If the fires are starting on the outer edge, count 2 bellows, then run to the next tile indicator. You can run there immediately if the inner fires are going. After counting 2 bellows on the inner tile, immediately run to the next indicator. Count 2 bellows, then run to the indicator before the lightning. As soon as you see your true tile update to this tile, click further through the lightning. If you have run so far with pretty good timing, you can immediately run to the indicator in the middle of the statues. Otherwise, wait on the earlier indicator and wait until you get the proper cycle with the lone fire at the front, and then after 2 bellows, run to the middle indicator. Count 2 bellows while on this tile, then immediately run through to the next indicator before the final sword. If you get here and the sword got thrown towards the end, the fastest way through the section is to catch one of the first blue tile teleporters, then hit the next teleporter on the second to last blue row tick perfectly. This will completely avoid the sword if you did it correctly. Alternatively, if the sword was just caught, you can actually outrun it, but you do need to catch 2 blue tile teleporters with pretty good timing. If you are a bit slow but caught the teleporters, you may need to run to the right side at the end to avoid the sword. Before you get to the stairs here, there is a final grapple challenge you can snag. Either way, jump down to the very final level. Now this next section is very tough. You need to get past a long arrow section filled with lightning and teleporters. Like I've said before, you should try to catch as many blue teleporters as possible and avoid yellow teleporters. When you get to the lightning at the end, stand a tile before it, then run all the way through. You can run diagonally through it at sections if you need to avoid arrows. Once you've made it through, run to my next tile indicator and get ready for the final section. This is by far the hardest section of the entire sepulcher. And of course, it's at the very end. This is the longest single checkpoint section and took me many run-throughs before I could get good enough to get through here consistently. Run to the tile before whatever statue is firing at the time and take a position where you won't get shot. Because there are arrows coming here, I don't use tile indicators. You need to take mental note of which statue just fired as you count 2 bellows and run to a position where the opposite statues won't hit you. I use the charred ground as an indicator of where I can't stand for this entire section. Once you have run to a safe position in the middle of the statues, count 2 bellows as you line your character up to push through the gap in the arrows. Then immediately after counting, run through. After you've made it, stand a tile before any side of the lightning and run through. Don't forget you can run diagonally through the sections to avoid arrows. There's a large gap up ahead with 4 statues, the first 2 every other cycle not firing at all. If they are firing, continue avoiding arrows while counting 2 bellows, then run through to the next set. Otherwise, just run straight through. Wait at the next set of flames and count 2 bellows while still avoiding arrows, then run through to a tile before the lightning. Run through straight or diagonally until you hit the final fire trap. Take this final section slow. A mistake here will cost up to a minute in lost time, which we really don't have to spare at this point. Walk up to a tile before the flames and count 2 bellows, then run midway through while avoiding arrows. We want to give ourselves a big time gap here, so I wouldn't run super far through. Run somewhere in the middle, just far enough you can make it through on the next cycle. Count 2 more bellows, lining yourself up for the incoming arrows, and then run through the rest of the fire. Prepare to dodge one final set of arrows based on the statue's animations, and then run through to the left. Congratulations, you've safely made it through the entire sepulcher. If you have more than a minute left, take that bridge coffin, as you can easily grab it and make it to the end with this much time left. You can then run to the final stepping stones and enter the final portal for the grand coffin if you still had time. The timer here is instantly paused as soon as you are on this step. I had a run that was a tick from failing where the timer said 0 seconds, but I could still loot the coffin, so keep that in mind. Loot the grand coffin, then back out of the portal you entered through. Restore your run energy if needed, and then right-click the obelisk and hit quick exit to begin at the lobby again. In what order should you buy rewards with your hallowed marks? Keep in mind none of these can be used outside of Sepulchre, and really only help here. All of these also count as a Saradomin item, including the ring, so you can ditch the Book of Law if you bought it at this point. These also work at Godware's dungeon, although they typically aren't a great choice as they have no stats. I don't believe that grapple even works for Path to Armadyl. Your first choice should always be the Hallowed Ring. This completely prevents traps from damaging you when you fail them and lets you reattempt a section more quickly. This is by far the most useful equipment piece you can buy, and it appropriately costs 250 marks versus the 100 the others cost. But this should absolutely be the first thing you buy. The following upgrades cost only 100 marks, and don't matter if you don't plan on looting coffins and only want the final coffin in XP. I first bought a Hallowed Grapple, as the Grapple Coffin Challenges seem to have the highest failure rate, and also waste a huge amount of time when you fail them. Next, I bought the Hammer. This is a tough choice between the Focus, but you do seem to fail the bridge construction challenges quite often. These don't waste much time, but they do waste 5 rune nails each attempt, which really adds up to your total cost. Finally, I grabbed the Hallowed Focus. This simply reduces your failure chance while opening Portal Challenge with your Enchant Jewelry spell. If they had the same failure chance, this would save you more money than the Hammer, but they don't seem to. You can also grab the Hallowed Symbol. This reduces the amount of Vampire Dust you need at prayer challenges from 2 to 1. This reduces the amount of XP you receive from opening the barrier, and you can't fail it anyway. So I bought this last. From here on, you can choose your choice of cosmetics if you want them. The Dark Graceful Recolor costs 300 marks apiece, or 1800 for a full set of Graceful. And the Dark Acorn Squirrel Recolor costs a whopping 5,000 marks. You can also, of course, buy Crystal Shards at 1 mark apiece to teleport back here, as well as tokens at 10 marks apiece, which can be popped for an extra minute in the Sepulchre when used. And you can use multiple in a single run. If you have nothing else to buy, it may be worth buying the tokens, as they can help you out of a sticky situation. I don't think it would be worth it to pop them in order to give extra time to loot the coffins on the earlier floors, as they do give worse loot, but I haven't tested this. If you're wondering how long it takes to get that Dark Graceful outfit, and that's all you want, it took me just over 100 grand coffin loots, and I did fail about 12 times, so give or take that many runs. Let's talk about what loot you can get from the coffins. This strange lockpick can be obtained from any coffin, and not only gives you a higher chance to open coffins in Sepulchre, they can also be used to open any door in the Barrow's Crypt. These have 50 charges each. 1 charge is good for a set of 2 doors. And these have been kind of unstable in their value, from 80k to 200k. So if you plan on doing any barrows as a main, these will increase your profit an hour quite substantially, as well as your rate at elite clue farming. Even at 200k, I still think it's very worth using these for barrows. They're pretty common from Sepulchre. I got one roughly every 2 runs. The deeper the floor, the more likely you are to get lockpicks from coffins. Any coffin will provide 0 to 6 marks of grace. The 5th floor seems to provide a minimum of 4 marks, as well as a single item off of their loot table. The final grand coffin provides 6 to 10 marks, and 2 items off of its loot pool, as well as a chance at the Ring of Endurance. From coffins, I've seen Rune and Addy 2-handers, Rune and Addy plate bodies, Ranar seeds and weeds, Runite and Addy bolts. This is one of the most valuable drops, as well as blood, soul, law, and nature runes in large quantities. There's more runes than that on the lower floors. The Grand Coffin seems to pull from the same table as regular coffin, just with 2 drops and extra marks. The Ring of Endurance can be obtained from the final coffin, and can be charged with stamina doses, each dose providing 1 charge. When the ring is charged with over 500 charges, it reduces your run drain rate by 15%. And when you drink a dose of stamina, it uses a charge, and then doubles the effect of the stamina, providing 40% run regeneration and 4 minutes of a stamina effect. This effect is incredibly useful anywhere you would be using stamina potions, as well as at solo Saradomin for extending trips dramatically. This has a ton of uses. The main ones that come to mind are rune crafting and blast furnace. but even for just general things like questing and clue hunting could be very helpful. From what I've seen, the ring seems quite rare. My best guess currently is 1 out of 256. Now, my personal experience with the rings might be causing some bias, as I did receive one not only on kill count 18, but one on kill count 21. But from what I've seen online, it seems to take people a couple hundred coffins before they get a ring. It is currently about 50 mil, and with how difficult the content it comes from is, I could see it staying above 30 mil for quite a long time. I also want to mention the pet chance, which changes depending on what floor you exit at, from 1 out of 35,000 when leaving floor 1 to 1 out of 2,000 at floor 5. This is actually a really good pet chance compared to other methods. Priv takes an average of almost 500 hours for pet, and Arty Course takes an average of 400. Whereas Sepulchre, if you are making 9-minute laps to floor 5, this would take almost exactly 300 hours for pet. Obviously, this doesn't even come close to the Penguin Course's rate, which comes to about 150 hours for pet, but it is a much better option than Priv or Arty. If you're worried about this method getting nerfed further, I did find a comment by Mod Husky, who was the lead dev on Sepulchre, stating he would like to see them add more agility XP for completing mini challenges, but felt it was in a fairly good place currently. A lot of the Sepulchre is subject to change, but it feels like it is in a great spot currently, and I am loving the content so far. Although, Jagex, if you happen to be listening, I wouldn't be opposed to a buff. And that's it for the video. This is my longest video yet, and I worked super hard on it. So definitely leave a like if you liked it, or subscribe. Thank you guys so much.